Hi, my name is Alchemisubi. Hey, all right. So I want to actually document my something about me working with Ambassador on Kubernetes and how I made it work. So people like me that actually prefers to watch video and go to YouTube and figure out if somebody already talk about it and stuff like that could have the opportunity to know or like have some content around it. So I'm trying to actually deploy an API gateway where I can authenticate all my services. I was looking around, and at the end of the day, I come up with the conclusion of just using Ambassador. It seems to be really well adopted. People are using it in production already, so it's a good solution for it. So I just wanted to share. I want to show you like how I did it, so you could just learn a little bit how to research information and how to think about it. So uh, I would definitely recommend you to just go and read the full documentation of what Ambassador is. Honestly, I don't think I would do a good job of explaining that. I think reading the documentation would be more beneficial for you. Personally, I like to actually read everything that is out there, even if I don't understand it, because my goal for the most part is to know what's out there. So, anyway, so let's actually start from scratch. So here you go. I'm gonna show you a little trick of what I do in my personal workflow when I'm learning. So I'm gonna restart my Kubernetes cluster. Ta-da. So this is where we just start from a clean slate and we don't have mess in our Kubernetes cluster. So you could see exactly how it will be done from the get-go. Nothing there. Uh, there we go. It's going. So while that's happening, you could just follow the quick start installation. You're gonna find I'm gonna run these commands to actually do the installation of Ambassador in my Kubernetes cluster. All right, since to be done, so I can actually use my command now. So I'm gonna go to the terminal and just copy paste what they have. If you could always like research a little bit more about what these files are, but pretty much just return the custom resource definition. That's what CRD stand for from Ambassador and deploying defaults, resources, stuff like that the Ambassador needs in this line. So, so you go back here, you can just run it. As you can see, it's just doing a lot of custom resource definition creation, then creating namespace called Ambassador, setting up roles, airbag, and stuff like that there, and creating like an admin service, so on and so forth. So it's doing a lot of things behind that deployment. So, all right, so now we should be able to do kubectl get namespaces, and then we're gonna have now Ambassador there. Cool. All right. So from here, they seems to be telling you, hey, you just if you want to know the IP, just do this. This hasn't been working for me for some reason, but at the end of the day, you could always do kubectl get service in the namespace of the ambassador, and then you're gonna see that the external IP is localhost. So that means I can just use 127.0.0.1, uh, which I'm gonna share with you that I'm using a straw hat. That team, that internals is mapped to localhost technically. So I'm just gonna be using this instead of localhost for now. So once that's done, there is a bunch of like documentation about like TLS certificates, stuff like that, which yep, as you could read there says where go to the host and make sure that you enable the ACMEC TLS. That's gonna be really helpful. Otherwise, you're gonna have some problem with it. So if I go to straw hat internals like here, right? You says the browser's telling you, hey, this is not secure. Are you sure you want to continue? For now, it's fine. This shouldn't happen in production because make sure you have like actual certificate and you're running everything HTTPS. So I go ahead, say yes. You're gonna land in this page, which just click on it. Here, there is some recommendation of installing the HCTL. which that's just for Ambassador CLI. So just follow the guidelines here. For the most part, I'm in macOS, so just copy here, paste it, and then that should be enough. After that, they tell you, hey, if you want to authenticate inside the console Ambassador, just use this command, which is edge-ctl login, then the namespace you want to use, which for us is Ambassador, and then the host, which for us is the straw hat, the team, the internal. So if we do that, it would actually redirect automatically to the Ambassador dashboard where you're gonna see the host, mapping, filter, and all this GUI where you could see all the features from Ambassador. So please, when you're reading this, do not miss this section. That's going to be really helpful. And all they're saying is, hey, in the host, just make sure you have the some TLS certificate. So use Acme for now, and that should be it. I'm gonna skip this for now because this is just based on their recommendation of how they're doing things. So, and I'm focusing more in how to show you how to use Okta for authenticating, right? So once that's done, we're just gonna deploy a random application, right? Just a service is gonna be there. So we're gonna create a new namespace. We are gonna create new servers running in port 80, and we are gonna create deployments, right? So that's just an application is gonna be running there. So kubectl apply, then one quote. All right, so that creates all the services, the service, the deployment, and the namespace. Of course, we cannot access that namespace, right? Uh, kubectl uh, get services in namespace of quote. So there is no external IPs, there is no mount to localhost or anything, nor I want it because what I want to do is actually go through the API gateway. So you go to the API gateway and the API gateway would know how to connect to that service, right? So for that, we need to create a mapping, right? So Ambassador allow you to have like custom mappings where you could specify based on some criteria where the request could go, right? That's the reverse proxy type of configuration. So as you can see here, I'm just saying it's a mapping from the Ambassador CRD. uh, it's just the name quote and quote backend. I'm gonna put that mapping in the ambassador namespace. And I'm gonna say everything that is forward slash backend forward slash will be routed to quote quote, which quote quote this notation pretty much means this is the service and this is the namespace of the service, right? Could be just this or you could do that as well, the name of the service here, quote, but we have deployed our service inside particular namespace. So this is the way you tell Kubernetes, hey, this is the one I'm talking about. You could research more about it. Just do ambassador mapping, and then there is a documentation about mapping. So references, configuration Kubernetes services, mapping services. You could read like tons of like configuration, and additional attributes and what they do. Just read through the documentation and figure out what you need. For our example, that's gonna be enough. So down here is where you're gonna figure out like, how you're supposed to do the service value, which I'm just using again like the Kubernetes resolver, which that way it's just service that namespace. So that's where it come from. So all right, so let's actually apply that to wait to that. So we are going to apply that and that should create mapping. So if we now go to the console of Ambassador, right, we should be able to see a mapping here. Now we see it say, hey, prefix URL, backend, go to the service. Also notice that we already have some default mappings like docs. So that means we should be able to come here and do docs, and it's not working because please pay attention to the forward slash. So it's not docs, it's docs forward slash. So that matters. And those are the things that you should be paying attention when you're dealing with Ambassador, by the way. So we have these docs, and then we have the open API, whatever that is, and we already configured that forward slash backend will go to our services. So that means we should be able to go, I'm gonna keep that open, go here and say backend forward slash, and it's not working. Boom, working. So the deployment happens, the connection happens. So now we are actually accessing that service that wasn't exposed through the API gateway, and there we go. So we have the service up and running. All right, so what's next? Well, I want to use Okta for authenticating before you hit my API, right? So I don't want people to be just consuming my API. I want them to authenticate so they can actually hit my API. So I have some way to know who they are, and and if you need the authentication your service, that's gonna be done there. So for that, we're gonna create a filter, and a filter. There's multiple type of filters. Honestly, like again, like please just read Ambassador about all the filters and the type of filters you have. So for this case, we are gonna use the OAuth 2 filter for configure an authentication with Okta, right? So uh, based on the OAuth 2 filter, which hopefully is over here, you're gonna have to deal with, all these configurations that you could pass. Again, like go and read about them, like what they do and so on. So the minimum required for us to make it work with Okta would be this that you see over here. So you have the authorization URL, which up here you could read about Ambassador Okta, right? Like they already have actually a documentation about it, and they explain to you that you need to create an Okta application and then copy the values that you need into the particular filter. Uh, this is something else. I don't want to get there, but I'm gonna stop here. So for the most part, this is a URL you're gonna copy, and then the Okta domain, which if you create an Okta account, a developer account, the easy way to find it is just remove the dash admin, and that will be your domain. That's the way to do it. Uh, so just change that to what you wanted. Then the client URL, again, I'm saying, look, go to HTTP straw hat team internals, which would resolve to my local host. Then the client and secret is where you need to go to Okta applications. Then you go to okay, this was the one I have configured. So you need to click in like new application, web, just give it a name, and then you need to configure this according to what the ambassador is telling you to do. Which, if you read the documentation, they are telling you, hey, for the base URL, make sure that you point to this particular one, right? So you need to make sure that you copy that and then put it here, and then make sure that change the the host, which for us is a straw hat team internals. It could be local host as well. It depends of your computer network and so on. Of course, this will change in production. Probably in production will be like either an IP or like an actual DNS or something like that. So just change all of those. Using like pointing to your ambassador local network for now, since we are trying to make it work for our local setup. So if you want a references, I already have this local development, which is the application. So this is how it look like for me, right? So authorization code, then this is a URL that I have there. This is URL for the logout, which I don't have that service. There's if I visit that, there is nothing there, but it doesn't matter. That comes later. Then the initial login URI, again, just make sure that points to ambassador. And here you could find the client credential, which is the client ID and the secret, and just copy that, put it in the Okta filter, and now we're gonna just deploy that to Kubernetes. Make sure that you pay attention to the name you use here for the filter. So uh, kubectl apply default 3, and that would actually create a filter for ambassador. So let's actually go to our GUI, and now you're gonna see that we should be able to have a filter here, right? So the filter or the configuration, you could find it here. All right, so we have a filter that configures against Okta, but how could we use a filter? And for us to use a filter, we need to create something called a filter policy. So a filter policy looks something like this, where I can have a policy that matches any host, and anything that is forward slash back and forward slash in any host would apply a particular filter. So that's what a filter policy is. So in this case, I'm saying, look, use this configuration in my policy rules and apply this filter. The name have to match to the filter that we create before, right? You have to match the available filters that we have. So, and you could pass a bunch of arguments. Again, you could read about those filters arguments in the official documentation. So all I'm saying here is, if you visit that, make sure that you actually go through the Okta filter, and the Okta filter will force you to authenticate with Okta. So if I go to kubectl, apply the for file, we now say, hey, once you visit, and I'm gonna create a new tab here. Once you visit backend, which remember we used to just hit it and give it information, now it's actually going to Okta because you're not authenticated. So you had to authenticate first and then move from there. So let me do that. All right, so once I authenticate, right, I went to Okta, put username and password, then I'm here, and I actually can consume the API. So if we take a look to our application cookies, now we have two cookies. We have the session and the CRS SRF token. So this one is for authenticating. This one is preventing XR, XSRF attacks. They have some documentations about that. You can find more information. I honestly lost the link, but they have information about what these cookies are and how to use it. That's it. That's how it works. So pretty much what we accomplish here is to add this authentication mechanism in the edge routing, where once you want to hit the APIs, or once you want to hit like particular service that we have, you have to authenticate against an IDP to be able to continue. Like a recap, you're gonna need some type of services you want. It doesn't matter. You're gonna create some mapping based on particular prefix or particular like rules that are gonna map to your internal services, to one or multiple of them. You're gonna create an Okta filter, or you could actually have like Azure Active Directory, or Auth0, or whichever IDP you want. You're gonna configure the OAuth2 workflow, and then you're gonna apply a policy of using that plugin to a particular rules, and that's how you get authenticated uh, in an API gateway using Ambassador, using Okta as your IDP. I hope this is useful. Or if you have any questions, just let me know in the comments. Honestly, I'm really new to this. I have no clue what I'm doing. It took me 8 nights to figure this out. So you could tell how bad I am, but hey, it works. So hopefully somebody find my video, and this may be helpful for you. All right, that's it. Bye bye.